I stood in court watching my sister sign a notarized confession after she forged my name, stole our family home, and drained my inheritance while I was living overseas. I'm Jenna, and I didn't come back to start a fight. I came back with a plan. She thought I'd stay quiet. She thought I'd never find out. But one email, one hidden security feed, and one old neighbor changed everything. Before we jump into the story, if you don't mind, let me know where you're from by leaving a comment below. That way, I can send a special hello your way. Now go ahead, grab yourself a warm cup of water, and find a comfy spot. It's time to begin the story. I parked at the bottom of the gravel drive and sat for a while, engine off, hands resting on the wheel. The front porch light was on, same yellow bulb, same buzz like a tired cicada in a jar. It flickered once, then held steady. I hadn't been here in almost 3 years, and yet somehow the light still knew when to wait up. The house looked just as I remembered. 2 stories, green shutters slightly crooked, a wraparound porch with the same wicker furniture we'd never replaced. But everything else, the silence, the air, the space between things, felt different. I stepped out of the car and rolled my suitcase behind me, wheels sticking slightly in the gravel. My feet hesitated at the bottom step. I'd imagined this moment more than once while living abroad, but imagination had never accounted for the weight in my chest or the hollowness that trailed behind each breath. Mom opened the door before I could knock. "Oh, Jenna," she said too brightly, pulling me into a quick, loose hug. Her perfume was different, sharper, more floral, and her arms didn't linger the way they used to. She pulled back and patted my shoulders like she was reassuring herself I was real. "You made it," she added. "The guest room's ready." Guest room. I smiled, nodded, stepped inside. The scent hit first, old lemon polish, the kind we used when I was 10, kneeling beside her with a rag and a bucket. The wallpaper hadn't changed. Neither had the squeaky third floorboard near the entryway, but the family photos on the wall were different. One frame had been turned slightly, revealing a gap where my high school graduation photo used to be. The space was filled with a beach picture of Elaine and her husband, Colby, smiling in matching sunglasses. Dad was in the living room, half hidden behind the newspaper. "Hey, kiddo," he said without looking up. I nodded and kept moving. Elaine came down the stairs with all the poise of someone arriving for a staged open house. Hair freshly curled, blouse tucked just so. She smiled wide, arms out. "Look at you," she said. "World traveler, back in town. Zurich treating you well?" "Fine," I said. Jet lag still catching up. "Of course. We made chicken pot pie, your favorite. Mom kept it warm." I thanked her, but the words felt thin. We sat down to dinner shortly after, the table laid out just like old times, except there was one fewer place setting, and my favorite mug, the blue one with the chipped rim, was gone. Over mashed potatoes, Elaine turned to Mom and said, "So I got the tax stuff handled last week. The forms are in the file cabinet. I think that's the last of the property paperwork." Mom nodded. "Good. Glad that's wrapped." I blinked. Property paperwork? Elaine looked at me like I'd interrupted a commercial break. "Oh, nothing big, just housekeeping. It's all taken care of." I let the silence stretch, then excused myself early. Claimed exhaustion, though no one protested much. Upstairs, the guest room, my old room, was as I left it, but muted. The posters were gone, desk cleared, bookshelves empty. The ceiling fan spun slowly overhead, its rhythm soft but steady. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the closet door, still bearing the faint marks where I used to tape up college brochures. I pulled off my shoes and lay back. The pillow smelled faintly of lavender, and for a moment, I closed my eyes. Then I opened them and stared at the ceiling fan again. It spun like it had all the time in the world, like it hadn't noticed anything changed. I turned to the nightstand. A small stack of mail had been left there. Junk ads, some catalogs, and a tax document peeking from an envelope. I pulled it out, scanning the return address. It was from the county assessor's office, addressed solely to Elaine Weller, not Elaine and Jenna, just her. I sat up. Quietly, I pulled my laptop from my bag and opened a browser. Searched Buncombe County Clerk of Deeds. Office hours, 8 a.m. I marked the address, then closed the lid. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I counted the turns of the fan until I lost track. I thought of Mom's voice from years ago. Home is where they remember your favorite mug. That mug wasn't in the cabinet anymore, and neither, it seemed, was I. The next morning, I left before anyone woke, or before anyone let on that they had. The kitchen was quiet, dishes still drying in the rack. I took a stale granola bar from the pantry and slipped out the front door. The dew on the porch steps soaked through my sneakers. The drive downtown was uneventful. A line had already formed outside the clerk's office, mostly older folks with folders under their arms. I stood behind a man wearing a fishing vest and reading the classifieds. My hands were cold. I wasn't sure if it was the air or something else. When the office opened, I stepped inside with the others and waited at the counter. The clerk was a woman in her 50s, glasses on a chain around her neck, nails tapping as she typed. "Looking up a property?" she asked, not unkindly. "Yes," I said, placing my ID on the counter. "I'm looking for the title record on 921 Eastfield." She typed, tapped, squinted at the screen. "Huh," she murmured. "It's not under your name." My pulse skipped. "It should be. It's family property." She shook her head. "It's under Elaine Weller. Last update, 14 months ago." "Is there any indication why I'm not on it?" "You'd need to check with whoever filed the change," she said. "We only show what's on file." "Can I see the latest deed?" She printed it and slid it across the glass. I picked it up with fingers that suddenly didn't feel like mine. The signature stared back, looped cursive my full name, but I didn't sign it. The D in Jenna curved the wrong way. The loops on the S were too stiff. It was familiar, but it wasn't me. I looked up at the clerk. She was already moving on to the next person in line. I walked out into the parking lot and sat on the hood of my car, the paper still in hand. The sun was rising higher now, casting light over the county seal stamped at the bottom of the page. My name was there, but it didn't belong to me. I sat in the car for longer than I meant to, parked outside the county clerk's office. The deed still rested in my lap, the paper warm now from the sunlight pouring through the windshield. I traced my supposed signature again and again. The loops were too tight, the rhythm too mechanical, close enough that a casual glance might not question it, but not close enough for someone who knew how I looped my J, like a question mark that never found its answer. When we were kids, Elaine once turned in a school group project and left my name off the cover page. I was 12. She said it was an accident, said I had wandered off during brainstorming, so she just thought I wasn't part of it anymore. I remember how the teacher gave her full credit, how Elaine never apologized, just shrugged and said, "Didn't think it mattered." I looked down at the fake signature. Apparently, she still didn't think it mattered. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo of the document. My fingers hovered a moment, then typed out the message. She forged my name. Help. I didn't have time to second-guess it. The phone rang less than 10 seconds later. "Where are you?" Darian's voice was steady. No shock, no panic, just presence. He had always been like that. We met years ago through a nonprofit legal event when I still lived in Boston. He was the one person I trusted to stay level when the ground shifted. "I'm at the clerk's office," I said, "downtown Asheville." "What do you have?" "A copy of the new deed. The title was changed 14 months ago. My name is gone. Elaine's is the only one listed. And the signature? It's mine, but not." There was a pause. "We'll need the deed, signature, and date of transfer," he said. "If you still have access to any international travel records, passport stamps, visa renewals, flight itineraries, send them. I'll start pulling state records from my end." "I have everything. Zurich keeps meticulous files." "You might be looking at more than an inheritance dispute," he added. "If she forged your name on a property title, that crosses into criminal territory." I leaned back in my seat. "I'm not running this time." "Good," he said. "Then we start today." After the call, I stared at the dashboard. The radio was off, but the silence had a pressure of its own. The edges of the document curled slightly under the sun. I folded it, tucked it into the passenger seat pocket, and started the engine. But I didn't drive home. I needed to know just how far this had gone. If she'd really taken the house, it wouldn't just be in paperwork. It would be out in the world, listed, marketed, maybe even shown. I opened my phone again and typed 921 Eastfield into the search bar, followed by Asheville Real Estate. The first link was from a site called Haven Properties. I clicked it. There it was. Charming Southern family estate. Motivated seller. 4-bed, 3-bath, wraparound porch, $629,000. The main photo showed the front of our house, porch newly painted, rose bushes trimmed. I scrolled through the gallery. Every image felt like a punch with a smile. The living room had new throw pillows. The fireplace had been scrubbed clean. No more soot from the winters we refused to turn up the heat. They'd staged my bedroom with pastel curtains and a vase of plastic flowers on the windowsill. The caption read, "Cozy nook with great natural light." Cozy nook. It used to be my room. The place I traced dreams into journals and stuck glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Where I wrote my first college essay. Where I cried the night I didn't get into my top choice program. Now it was a reading corner. The listing agent's name was at the bottom. Greg Lowell. I tapped the number before I could talk myself out of it. "Hello, Greg speaking, Haven Properties. How can I help you today?" "Hi," I said, steadying my voice. "I saw the listing for 921 Eastfield. Is it still available?" "Ah, yes, just went up recently. Beautiful place. Been in the same family for years, actually. But the owner is relocating and the title's all clear. Should close pretty fast." "Elaine Weller is the owner?" "That's right. She's the sole name on the title. No liens, no disputes. Fully verified through the county system." I didn't answer right away. My throat had tightened. "Would you like to schedule a showing?" he asked. "No," I said. "That won't be necessary." I hung up. Outside the car, the parking lot was filling with older couples heading toward the Social Security office next door. One man adjusted his veteran's cap while his wife checked her phone. A younger woman carried a tray of diner coffee past my window, the smell teasing through the glass, burnt, comforting, real. And yet, none of it felt real. I sat there, staring at the lock screen of my phone, watching the seconds tick by. The time didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore. Neither did the house. Neither did the history I thought was still mine. I opened my texts and typed to Darian again. Found the listing. It's staged. It's being sold right now. My name's nowhere. Hers is everywhere. He replied within moments. "Forward me the link, the screenshots, and the deed copy. If there's a pattern here, I'll find it. This smells like forgery. Maybe worse." I sent everything. My hands shook slightly, but not from fear. Something colder had settled beneath my ribs. Something still, hard-edged. This wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just being written out. It was watching someone else package your life, stage it with throw pillows, and list it for $600,000. I scrolled back up to the listing and looked at the words again. Motivated seller, I bet she was. I closed the browser, turned off the screen, and stared out through the windshield as if the world might shift back into place if I just looked long enough. But it didn't. And that's when it hit me. They didn't just forget me. They didn't just ignore me. They had erased me. And somehow, they'd done it cleanly, quietly, and with paperwork that smiled back at you. I whispered into the quiet cabin of my car. They really did it. They made me disappear. The kitchen smelled like black tea and toast when I walked in. Elaine was standing by the stove, her back to me, humming something light, probably jazz. It was the kind of morning sound that might have once felt like home, before everything went silent in a different way. She didn't turn around. "Sleep okay?" she asked, dropping a tea bag into her favorite white mug, the one with the chipped handle she never let anyone else touch. I stepped further in, keeping my voice even. "I went to the county clerk's office yesterday." She stilled for a second, then picked up the kettle and poured without looking back. The steam curled toward the ceiling. "Oh?" she said lightly. "That must have been enlightening?" I pulled out a chair and sat down across from her place at the table. There were 2 slices of toast already there. I wasn't sure if one was meant for me or not. "They printed me the deed," I said. "My name's gone." She finally turned, mug in hand, and gave me that smile she always wore when she thought she was winning, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "We've talked about this," she said. "No," I replied. "You talked." I disappeared. Her smile twitched, but held. "Jenna, you left. You moved across the world. You didn't respond to Dad's emails. You stopped checking in. We had to make decisions." "You forged my name." She sipped her tea. "Can you prove that?" I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't nervous, she was rehearsed. Every word, every gesture placed just right, like a carefully stacked house of cards, but even the neatest lies start to shake when the wind changes. "I can," I said quietly, "and I will." Behind her, Mom stood at the sink, rinsing a glass, eyes focused on the soap bubbles. She hadn't said a word since I entered the room. Elaine set her mug down and brushed her hair behind her ear. "This doesn't have to get messy." "You already made it messy," I replied. "You just hoped I wouldn't notice." She opened her mouth, but I stood up before she could shape the next excuse. My chair scraped against the floor. The sound startled Mom, but she didn't look up. "I'm calling a lawyer," I said. Elaine smiled again. "Be my guest." But I'd already turned toward the stairs. Back in my old room, I closed the door and locked it out of habit. The walls were bare now, just faint outlines of where posters used to hang. I sat on the floor beside the bed and opened my laptop. It took a moment for the Zoom app to load and a moment longer for Darian's face to appear. Clean-shaven, button-up shirt, coffee in hand. "You look like someone who didn't get much sleep," he said. "I didn't," I admitted, "but I'm ready." "Good, I've been digging," he said, "and what I've found is interesting." He clicked around on his screen, then shared his view. A document appeared, a wire transfer authorization. $45,000, he said. "Transferred from a joint account under your name, March of last year. The signature? Yours. The authorization? Also yours." My mouth went dry. "I didn't sign that," I said. "Where were you that week?" "Zurich. I was giving a presentation at a finance conference. I have the itinerary, the visa stamp, everything." Darian nodded. "Then this just got bigger. We're not just looking at inheritance fraud. This falls under criminal identity theft." I stared at the screen. My name was there again, typed, signed, authorized. But once again, it wasn't mine. They'd been using it like a tool, a permission slip, a blank check. "They didn't just take the house," I said quietly. "They took my identity to fund it." Darian leaned forward. "We'll get ahead of this. But I need everything. Email chains, mail you've received, any other documents where your name shows up unexpectedly." "I'll go through every drawer in this house if I have to," I said. He smiled faintly. "That's the spirit." There was a beat of quiet. Then I asked, "Have you ever dealt with something like this before?" He paused, considering. "Not quite like this. Most fraud cases don't come dressed in family photos and birthday cards. But paper doesn't lie. And from what I'm seeing, the paper's on your side." I nodded, even though the weight in my chest hadn't lifted. It wasn't about paper. It was about memory, erasure, trust that had dissolved like sugar in water, sweet, then gone. After we hung up, I stayed sitting on the floor, laptop resting on my knees. I thought about the time Elaine cut my hair in my sleep. I was 11, and she said I looked better that way. I cried for days. She said I was overreacting. "It'll grow back." She'd shrugged. The hair grew back. The message didn't. This wasn't about property. It wasn't even about money. It was about power, silence, and the small ways you learn to step aside until you forget you're allowed to stand in your own space. I stood up, stretched my arms, and crossed to the closet. The old storage boxes were still there, tucked behind winter coats. I pulled them out one by one, sorting through tax returns, bank statements, and a folder labeled Zurich Travel. This time, I wasn't just reacting, I was preparing. I scanned each page into a shared drive and renamed the files as I went. Every click felt like a reclamation, a stitch in something that had been ripped. I made a spreadsheet of dates, transfers, emails, travel logs. The mess they made was neat, but mine would be neater. By the time the sun began to dip behind the oaks outside, I had 4 folders compiled and backed up. One to my laptop, one to the cloud, and one to Darian's encrypted system. I leaned back and looked at the ceiling. This wasn't over, not even close. But for the first time since I landed back in North Carolina, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own house. I felt like a witness, and I wasn't going anywhere. The road out to Myrtle Pines curved through green hills, thick with early summer air and the hum of cicadas. I hadn't driven that stretch in years, not since I was in high school, and Mom had gone there once after her surgery for a short rehab stint. Back then, I brought her crossword puzzles and lemon candies in a tin. This time, I carried a folder and a quiet kind of anger that sat just behind my ribs. The facility hadn't changed much. Pale brick, wide porches, that same painted sign with curling blue letters. Inside, the scent of antiseptic mixed with something floral. The receptionist looked up, a little wary until I said I was Corinne Weller's daughter. "I'm not asking for anything official," I said gently. "I just have some questions, off the record." Her eyes softened. "Let me see who's available." A few minutes later, a nurse in scrubs met me near the hallway, far from the front desk. She looked like she'd seen enough life to know when not to ask too many questions. "I remember your mom," she said. "She was here, early last spring? Hip issue, right?" I nodded. "She had a fall outside the grocery store. Hit her head, too." She made a small sound of recognition. "That's right. Poor thing didn't know what year it was for the first few days. Kept asking if her mother was coming to pick her up." My throat tightened. And during that week, would it have been appropriate for her to sign legal documents? The nurse raised an eyebrow. She wasn't making grocery lists, let alone decisions about estate law. "Do you happen to have therapist logs from then? Notes?" She hesitated. "That's protected information." "I understand," I said, "but I'm not asking to take anything with me, just to see it. I think someone used her confusion to gain power of attorney, and if that's true, I need to know." She held my gaze a moment longer, then nodded and walked toward the back. 10 minutes later, she returned with a slim folder. "I'll give you 5 minutes," she said, handing it over. We were short-staffed then, so the therapist logged everything longhand. I opened the file with careful fingers. The notes were dated and cleanly written. And then, just a few entries in, there it was. Patient disoriented, unaware of time and place, requires daily reminders of her location and purpose for stay. Below it, a signature, my mother's, on a power of attorney form, no witness, no physician's note, just a notary stamp and a shaky pen stroke. She didn't know what she was signing, I whispered. The nurse said nothing. She didn't need to. I closed the folder and handed it back, murmured a quiet thank you, and walked out into the heavy afternoon air. A thunderhead loomed in the distance, thick and gray, rolling over the hills like something gathering momentum. Back at the house, I went to my old room and pulled the blinds. The sky was darker now, the air pressing in. I opened my laptop and logged into the home's security system. I'd set it up years ago when Mom complained about porch pirates. They never bothered to change the password after I left. The interface was still familiar. I clicked through the archived feeds, searching by timestamp, date ranges, and then I found it. 2 weeks ago. Elaine stood in the kitchen in a sleeveless navy dress, hair pinned, makeup perfect. She was showing a man around, clipboard in his hand, casual smile on his face. Her voice, low but clear through the feed, said, "The title's clean. I have full authority." My mother signed power of attorney over to me before her condition worsened. I paused the video. She was lying, calmly, effortlessly. I reached into my folder and pulled out the revocation document, one my mother had signed a year ago on a Zoom call with me from Zurich. I'd walked her through the form. She had looked right into the camera and said, "I'm taking it back." Elaine shouldn't be handling anything. We'd submitted it together, digitally notarized. I still had the confirmation email. Elaine knew that. She was betting no one else would. I hit record on the screen and saved the footage, then forwarded it to Darian, attaching the revocation and a copy of the rehab therapist's note. A few minutes later, his reply came through. "This is real-time fraud. She's misrepresenting her legal authority to a potential buyer. That's not just a civil issue, that's criminal document fraud. We have her on tape." I stared at the frozen frame again. Elaine, gesturing toward the ceiling, pointing out details like it was already hers. This house remembered who I was. I'd helped Dad install that skylight she was bragging about. I'd sanded those kitchen cabinets, and now she was selling it like I never existed. Not this time. I turned off the feed and leaned back. The girl who used to save grocery receipts just to prove she wasn't careless? She never went away. She just got smarter. The air was buzzing with the hum of the coming storm. I welcomed it. Let the sky split open. Let it pour. I had backups now, witnesses, timestamps. I wasn't arguing feelings anymore. I was proving facts. The bank had marble floors and piped-in jazz that was meant to be calming but only made my stomach turn. I sat across from the branch manager in a conference room that smelled like printer toner and someone's cologne. Darian was next to me, tie slightly loosened, calm as ever. The manager clicked through screens with fingers that trembled just slightly. He kept glancing at me like he didn't know whether to apologize or defend himself. "There's a transaction," he said finally, voice low. "March of last year, a loan dispersal for $38,000. My throat felt tight. "Under what name?" He swallowed. "Odessa Weller. That's you." Darian leaned forward. "She was out of the country. We have passport stamps, employment logs, and flight itineraries that prove it." The manager clicked again. "Here's the scanned authorization form." He turned the screen toward me. My name was there. Neat cursive. Not mine. The slant was too perfect. The loops too symmetrical. Whoever wrote it practiced. "Was it notarized?" Darian asked. The manager nodded, then paused. "The notary on file isn't with us anymore. Left about 6 months ago." "We'll subpoena the notary log," Darian said. "Of course," the manager replied, but his voice cracked on the word. He knew. I sat still, watching the edges of the signature blur slightly in my vision. "They used my name," I said softly. "They used my name like it belonged to them." Outside, a wind was picking up. The season had turned sharp overnight. North Carolina autumns don't always come with color. Sometimes it's just a drop in temperature and the feeling that something's closing in. Back at the Airbnb, I kicked off my shoes and sat on the floor, back against the couch, laptop open. I was going through scanned documents when my phone buzzed. Mrs. Calder. We hadn't spoken in years, not since she'd brought over homemade pecan pie the summer before I left for Zurich. She was the neighbor who always noticed, who always remembered your dog's name, who never asked too much but never missed a thing. Her message was short. "You should see this. I recorded it 2 weeks ago. Didn't know who else to send it to." Attached was a video. I tapped it open. The screen lit up with the view from her porch, angled across the fence into ours. The timestamp matched the week Elaine had toured the house with that clipboard man. Elaine was standing over Mom, who sat hunched in the porch swing, clutching the armrest. "Don't say anything to Jenna," Elaine snapped. "Do you want to lose this house too?" Mom flinched. I watched it twice, 3 times, then muted it, but the sound still rang in my chest. They hadn't lied loudly. They'd let silence do the work. That night, I called my father. He picked up after the 3rd ring. I could hear the rustle of his chair on the porch and the soft flick of his lighter. He always smoked outside when he didn't want to answer hard questions. "Hey," he said. "Dad." A pause. "I saw the footage," I said. I know what she said to Mom. I know about the loan. I know about the forged forms." He didn't speak, just the sound of an exhale. "You let it happen." "We didn't want drama," he said, almost a whisper. I closed my eyes. "You already have it. Jenna." "No," I said. "I'm not asking for your permission. I'm letting you know I'm done protecting the quiet. I'm done pretending this family is anything but complicit." He didn't reply. I didn't expect him to. I hung up. Then I opened my laptop, pulled up the files Darian had already labeled: fraud, identity theft, POA abuse. I added one more: footage. Called her, uploaded the video, stamped the date. And then I typed the email: "Darian, file everything. I'm ready. No more waiting." The next morning, we stood in front of the Buncombe County Courthouse. The sky was overcast, the kind that held in the heat and made everything feel stuck. Darian had already filled out the emergency injunction paperwork. He handed it to me to sign, and for a moment, my hand hovered over the line. My name. My real name. I signed it. Inside, we met with the clerk, a no-nonsense woman in a burgundy cardigan and glasses that hung from a silver chain. She looked at the file, at Darian, then at me. "You have backup on these claims?" she asked. Darian slid the folders forward. "Signed and time-stamped. We're freezing the estate before any sale can be finalized." She nodded and stamped the papers. "You'll get confirmation by tomorrow. You'll need to attend the emergency hearing next week." "We'll be there," I said. Outside, the air felt heavier, but clearer somehow, like something had snapped into place. We drove back in silence, Darian's fingers drumming lightly against the steering wheel. When we pulled up to my Airbnb, he looked over at me. "You sure about this?" I looked out the window. Leaves were starting to gather in the gutters. "I'm sure," I said. "They spent years building a lie. I've spent a week and it's already cracking." He smiled faintly. "Let's finish the job." Later that evening, after the sun dipped below the trees and the cicadas quieted, my phone buzzed again. It was Elaine. "What the hell are you doing?" her text read. "The bank called. Why are you trying to destroy everything?" I stared at the message. My fingers hovered. Then slowly I typed, "You shouldn't have forged my name." I hit send. She didn't reply, and I didn't need her to, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about truth, and the silence they'd used to erase me, I'd turned it into evidence. The courtroom wasn't crowded, just enough people to make the silence feel like pressure. I sat beside Darian at the petitioner's table, hands folded, breath steady. Across the aisle, Elaine wore a blazer that didn't fit her usual style. Too stiff, too buttoned up, like she was playing a role she didn't quite rehearse enough. The judge entered. Neutral face, short haircut, black robe that made her seem both impossibly distant and suddenly present. She looked through the stack of files Darian had submitted days earlier: forged documents, financial records, the notarized POA revocation, and the video of Elaine walking buyers through the house like it already belonged to her. Darian spoke first, calm, exacting. He laid out everything: the forged signature on the deed, the dispersed loan under my name, the POA filed while my mother was mentally unfit, and the security footage capturing Elaine asserting false legal authority. "Fraud," he said, "doesn't always show up with red flags. Sometimes it wears the face of familiarity, but the law doesn't care how polite the lie is. It only cares that it's a lie." Elaine's lawyer followed, painting me as distant, disengaged, someone who'd left the family and only returned when she smelled money. She removed herself, he argued. Miss Weller hadn't lived in the home for years. Her parents assumed she'd moved on. I stood. The judge nodded for me to speak. "My absence wasn't abandonment," I said. "I moved overseas for work. I called, I sent gifts. I paid my share of property tax for 3 years, even when my name started disappearing from the records. No one told me I was being written out, not in words, not in warning." Elaine didn't meet my gaze. Her eyes were fixed on the table in front of her. "Distance isn't absence," I said again, "and silence isn't consent." The judge looked at me for a long moment, then turned to Elaine. "Do you dispute these documents were filed from your personal account? That this signature, which you claim to be your sister's, was not written by her?" Elaine hesitated. I thought she was done with all of it." "That's not an answer," the judge said. Elaine's lawyer leaned in and whispered something. She nodded. "I won't fight the evidence," she said finally. "I'll sign." And she did, right there, in front of the court, under the eyes of the clerk and 2 notaries. A full confession, admitting to forging the deed, misusing power of attorney, and using my name without authorization. Later that week, Colby, her husband, lost his financial license. The court flagged their shell company and opened a separate inquiry into bank fraud. I didn't follow the details. I didn't need to, because that morning I got the call. The house title was restored, not just legally, fully, clean. My name was back where it belonged. I drove there alone one last time. The sky was a flat gray, the air cold enough that my breath fogged the glass when I parked out front. I didn't take anything with me, just a manila envelope with a single letter inside. I walked up to the porch, still creaky in the same spots, and slipped it through the mail slot. It simply read, "The truth doesn't need your permission." Then I turned, walked back to my car, and didn't look back. The cabin in Boone sat on the edge of a small clearing, tucked between 2 pines that looked like they were planted there to hold secrets. It wasn't fancy. 1 bedroom, a screen door that squeaked, a wood-burning stove that took time to get going. But it was mine. The first night there, I placed a small photo on the nightstand, me and my grandmother covered in flour, laughing in her kitchen. I'd kept that photo in a drawer for years. Now it had a place. There were no boxes marked "family" left to unpack, no legal folders, no courtroom transcripts, just a quiet room and my own name on the lease. I opened a new bank account that week. No joint holders, no unexpected withdrawals, just me, Jenna Marie Weller. I didn't send the letter I'd written to my parents. I didn't check to see if Elaine replied to the court's terms. I didn't visit the old neighborhood, because peace, I was learning, doesn't require an audience. Sometimes it just needs boundaries. They had erased me quietly, behind closed doors, with signatures and silence. But I came back, and I rewrote myself. Sometimes the hardest part isn't what they took. It's realizing who stayed silent while it happened. I didn't come back for revenge. I came back for truth, and for the part of me that still believed in it. Family can disappoint you in quiet ways, through omissions, through inaction, but standing up for yourself doesn't mean shutting others out. It means choosing peace over permission and healing even when no one says they're sorry. If this story reminded you of a time you had to reclaim something that was yours, your voice, your place, your peace, I hope you'll share it. Your story might be the one someone else needs to hear.